We must address this matter with urgency and care.
And in the royal world, silence is never accidental. When Prince William discovered that Princess Charlotte's name had been quietly removed from the official succession documents, something inside him snapped. It wasn't just a clerical error. It wasn't protocol. It was erasure, a wound that echoed the one left on his mother, Diana, and William refused to let history repeat itself. What happened next, behind palace walls, shook the royal household to its core. Because this time, William wasn't the boy who lost his mother. He was a father fighting for his daughter. Before we dive deeper into this emotional and explosive royal confrontation, make sure you hit like. It helps more people discover stories like this. And if you enjoy real human-style royal narratives told with clarity and empathy, consider subscribing. Share the video with someone who follows the royal family closely, because they need to hear this one. The morning at Anmer Hall began the way so many of William and Kate's mornings did. Soft, quiet, almost deceptively peaceful. Pale November light slid along the old stone floors, brushing against children's shoes scattered near the doorway and half-finished school projects, still waiting to be taken back to class. It was a home that lived, breathed, laughed, a place where the future king didn't feel like the heir, but simply Dad. Upstairs, Charlotte's bright laugh bounced between the walls like a burst of sunlight. George chased her down the corridor, pretending to be a knight defending a castle, while Louis yelled something about guarding the chocolate treasure. It was chaos, but the kind parents learned to treasure, because this was the one space where the real world couldn't quite reach them, or so they thought. Kate stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee halfway to her lips, her smile gentle as she watched the children's footsteps echo overhead. She loved mornings like this, before headlines, before cameras, before duty. Then William's phone rang, not the usual ringtone, not a text, not a family message. This one was different, the secure line, the one that always meant the outside world was about to break in. Kate lowered her mug instantly. She knew that sound too well, the shift in William's shoulders, the way he turned before even answering. It was all the warning she needed. The future king wasn't summoned for anything trivial. By the time she reached the study, he had already closed the door behind her. She slipped in just as he pressed the phone to his ear. "Yes," he said, voice clipped. "Go ahead." Kate watched the color drain from his face. First confusion, then disbelief, and then something deeper, something colder. A long pause followed. William's grip whitened around the edge of the desk. "Say that again," he whispered. Kate strained to hear the faint, apologetic voice on the other end. She caught fragments, succession documents, updated protocols. Irregularity, discovered ceremonial roles list. Then the part that made William go absolutely still. Princess Charlotte's name removed. The words hung in the room like smoke from a fire neither of them had seen coming. Charlotte, their daughter, gone from the official record. Kate's breath caught. She reached for William's shoulder, grounding him, though she felt him trembling beneath her palm. "Removed?" William repeated, not as a question, but as if he needed to force the reality into the air, as though speaking would make sense of it. "Yes, sir," the aide said. "We compared the newest succession planning document with the version from March. Princess Charlotte appeared in the previous one, but the updated version from September, she's missing." Kate felt the shock physically. A cold burst down her spine. William's eyes were hollow, but beneath that emptiness, something fierce was waking. "And who," he asked, voice saw up at edge like a blade, "authorized this change?" There was shuffling, a fumbling of papers, a hesitation long enough to confirm what Kate already feared. "The Queen Consort's office, sir." Camilla. The name hit the air like an accusation. For a moment, neither William nor Kate spoke. It was as if the walls themselves understood the weight of what had just been said. William gently placed the phone down. Too gently. The kind of care that meant he might break if he didn't control every movement. "She erased her," he said, voice cracking at the edges. "She erased my daughter." Kate stepped closer, her hand sliding from his shoulder to his back. She knew this pain. It wasn't just a day's news. It was years of history surging forward like a tide. "It must be a misunderstanding." Kate whispered, though even she didn't believe it. William turned to her, eyes filled with a grief that was far older than the morning's call. "It's my mother all over again," he said quietly. "They tried to write Diana out of the story. And now they're doing to Charlotte." That was when Charlotte, bright and breathless, burst into the room. "Mommy, George said I can't be in the parade because girls don't get to do the important parts." She froze, reading the tension. Children always sensed more than adults gave them credit for. William blinked rapidly, composing himself as he pulled her into his arms, holding her too tightly, like she might slip away if he let go. "That's not true, my darling," he whispered. "You'll always be exactly where you belong." Charlotte smiled, not really understanding, but comforted by her father's fierce tone. She scampered back out, taking George with her, Louis wobbling after them with his stuffed lion trailing behind. The moment the children disappeared, the room tightened around them again. Kate stepped forward. "What does this mean, practically?" "It means," William said, voice shaking with restrained fury, "someone decided Charlotte doesn't matter as much as her brothers." Kate's own anger ignited then, quiet but burning, the kind of anger only a mother could feel. "Expendable," William said bitterly. "They made her expendable." "No," Kate snapped, stepping in front of him. "Absolutely not. Our daughter is not expendable." William looked at her, eyes shining with a mixture of resolve and heartbreak. "I'm going to Clarence's house." "I'm coming with you." "No," he said firmly. "I need you here with the children. If this goes badly." "It won't," she insisted. "You're fighting for our child. You cannot lose." He closed his eyes for a moment, letting her steady him. When he opened them, he wasn't just her husband. He was the heir, the man his mother raised him to be, a protector, a father who would not allow the past to swallow his daughter's future. Kate watched him put on his coat, watched his transformation, watched the boy who had once been helpless now become a man prepared to confront the storm. As he walked toward the door, Charlotte's small voice called from the hallway. "Papa, where you going?" "To fix something important," he said softly. "I'll be back soon." Charlotte nodded, trusting him completely. And that trust, that innocent certainty, was the very reason William stepped out of the house with fire in his chest. He wasn't going to Clarence's house as a prince. He was going as a father who had already lived through one erasure in his childhood, and would never allow another. The drive to London felt heavier than usual, as if the entire country pressed down on William's shoulders. The sky hung low, gray and restless, mirroring the storm building behind his eyes. He barely felt the hum of the engine, barely noticed a rhythm of traffic along the M11. His mind was fixed on one thing, Charlotte's missing name, and the person who had dared to remove it. Camilla. The name echoed in his skull like a drumbeat. He wasn't a child now. He wasn't powerless. He wasn't the quiet, grieving boy left standing outside his mother's locked door while adults made decisions that crushed her. He was a father, and someone had tried to make his little girl disappear. As London's old stone buildings emerged through the haze, William's jaw set harder. Clarence's house rose ahead, regal and serene, but William saw only the conflict waiting inside its walls. Security looked baffled when he strode through the gates alone. No scheduled meeting, no aides, no escort. "Your Royal Highness," we weren't informed. "I'm aware," William said curtly. "Where's the Queen Consort?" The steward swallowed, clearly sensing the fury behind the calm exterior. "In the drawing room, sir." Perfect. The corridors felt different than he remembered. Not wrong, but rearranged. Softer colors. New floral arrangements. Portraits he didn't recall approving. Signs of Camilla's quiet takeover. Not malicious, but unmistakable. She had been shaping this home to fit her version of the monarchy. But altering a home was one thing. Altering the line of succession was another. In the cream-colored drawing room, William didn't sit. He paced, the adrenaline refusing to settle. 3 slow strides to the window. Pivot. 3 strides back. The door finally opened. Camilla entered with a serene composure she perfected after decades of weathering public storms. She wore a gentle smile, the kind meant to diffuse tension before it ever sparked. "William," she said lightly, as if greeting him for afternoon tea. What a surprise. He didn't smile back. He didn't move. Why? He asked, voice calm but dangerously hollow. Was Charlotte's name removed? Camilla blinked, a small flicker of uncertainty, quickly smothered beneath her usual poise. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Don't. The word cracked through the room like a whip. He reached into his coat, pulled out the documents the aide had rushed to him earlier that morning, and laid them between them on the ornate table. Your signature. Your office. Charlotte's name gone. Camilla's expression shifted. Just barely. A tightening around the eyes. A slight lift of the chin. She wasn't shocked. She was preparing her explanation. It was simply ceremonial streamlining, she said, tone soft, careful. Nothing more. William stepped closer. My father did not authorize this. Her lips pressed together, a tiny sign that she knew she'd been caught. These documents, William repeated, tapping the page, were altered under your authority. Camilla straightened, the warmth fading from her voice. Her grip on decorum slipped, revealing the steel beneath. Her position is complicated, she said. A daughter, not the direct heir. The public prefers clarity. The public, William cut in, or your allies who want the monarchy frozen in the past. Camilla flinched. William continued, anger sharp but controlled. Primogeniture changed in 2013. Charlotte has the same standing as Louis. Her gender does not make her lesser. Camilla's mask cracked further. People expect tradition, she argued. Stability. Not complications? William stepped toward her again. Not girls. The accusation hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. Camilla's voice rose. Don't twist my words. You don't understand the optics. This isn't about optics. William's voice dropped low. Dangerous. Is this about Laura? For a split second, something raw flickered across Camilla's face. Unexpected, vulnerable. How dare you? But before she could finish, the door opened sharply. King Charles stood there, and the room fell silent. He looked smaller than William remembered. Frilier, his illness carved shadows along his cheekbones, and there was a tremor in his hand as he leaned on the doorframe. But his eyes, they were sharp, clear, and furious. What is going on in here? Charles murmured, though the strain in his voice said he already knew it was bad. William stepped back, breathing hard. Camilla went still. Charles approached slowly, studying the papers William had laid out. His gaze passed over the missing name, Princess Charlotte, and his expression shifted. The king's pain was immediate, visible. Camilla, he whispered, what have you done? Camilla reached for him instinctively, but Charles didn't move toward her. She froze mid-gesture, her hands suspended in the air. I can explain, she began. Then do, Charles said, because from where I stand, it appears you erased my granddaughter. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The quiet disappointment cut deeper than any shout. Camilla's shoulders tightened. It was meant to simplify the documentation. You're unwell. The transition is approaching. So you decided. Charles interrupted sharply. Which of my grandchildren belong? Her breath hitched. William watched her facade cracking. Hairline fractures forming beneath years of carefully built composure. It was an administrative decision, she insisted. No, William said softly. It was personal. Camilla's jaw trembled. You don't understand. I spent my life on the outside, watching, being unwelcome. My own daughter. This is not about Laura. Charles snapped, sharper than William had ever heard him. The room stilled. William stared at his father. The king's frail hands were trembling, but his voice held an authority that silenced both of them. Charlotte's name will be restored immediately, Charles said, his tone final. Every grandchild of mine will be included in all ceremonial documentation, equally. Camilla swallowed hard. Charles, have I made myself clear? Her eyes dropped. Yes. She stood still for a long moment, gathering what remained of her dignity, then finally stepped aside, her expression unreadable. I'll leave you both, she murmured. As she slipped out, The soft click of the door felt like a full stop at the end of an era. William let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Charles lowered himself into a chair, the weight of the moment, and perhaps the weight of his own mortality, settling on him. "I'm running out of time," he said quietly, "and I have made so many mistakes." William sat beside him, emotion thick in his throat. "Then let's start fixing them," he replied. "With Charlotte." The king nodded slowly, a weary but genuine smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "For once," Charles whispered, "let's get it right." And in that quiet room, beneath old portraits and centuries of legacy, father and son sat together, not as king and heir, not as symbols of an ancient institution, but as two men finally choosing to protect the family they still had left. The rain had started again by the time William reached the outskirts of Norfolk. Thin at first, then gathering into a steady curtain that blurred the world beyond the windscreen. He didn't turn on the radio, didn't call anyone, didn't even let the heater drown out the hum of the engine. He needed the silence. He needed the space to breathe. Charlotte's name was safe again, but victory felt strangely hollow. He'd faced Camilla. He'd confronted the truth. He'd watched his father, fragile, exhausted, stepping like a king one last time. And yet, William felt no triumph, only ache. Something in him had cracked open in that room. Something old. Something he'd spent years building walls around. When Anmer Hall finally appeared through the rain, it looked more like a refuge than ever before. Warm lights glowed through the windows. A silhouette, a small one, flashed past the glass. Children waiting. Children who had no idea how close they'd come to losing a piece of their story. He hadn't even stepped out of the car before Charlotte was running toward him. Barefoot, rain soaking through her socks, hair wild, face lit with pure relief. "Papa." He caught her mid-jump, lifting her effortlessly, her small arms locking around his neck. "Did you fix it?" she whispered. He froze. "Fix what?" But then he realized. Children always knew more than adults assumed. She didn't know the details, but she'd felt something break this morning. Felt him leave with a heaviness she'd never seen before. "Yes," William said softly, pressing his forehead to hers. "I fixed it." George and Louis barreled into him next, all arms and legs and noise. For a moment, William couldn't breathe. There were too many small limbs wrapped around him, too much love crushing into his ribs. But he wouldn't have traded that moment for anything. Kate appeared in the doorway, watching him with a look he understood instantly. She saw through his composed smile. She always did. Without a word, she stepped aside for him to enter. Inside, the house felt impossibly warm. Safe. The kind of warmth no palace ever truly held. They dried off, changed into soft clothes, and regrouped around the kitchen island. The pasta Kate had made was still warm. The garlic bread was half gone. Louis's handiwork, no doubt. They ate like it was any other night. But it wasn't. After dinner, after the playful arguments and the syrupy hugs, after Louis's campaign for extra dessert and George's quiet attempts to help tidy up, the parents gave each other one glance, the one that said, "It's time." They gathered the children in the sitting room, the fire crackling softly. William took Charlotte into his lap. She curled against him, trusting, warm, and so heartbreakingly small. "You know how grown-ups make mistakes sometimes?" William began gently. Charlotte nodded. George leaned in closer. Louis clutched his stuffed lion a little tighter. "Well," William continued, "there was a mistake in a list of important royal events. Your name wasn't on it." Charlotte frowned, processing. "But I'm supposed to be there." "You are," Kate said softly. "And Daddy made sure that mistake was fixed." George spoke immediately, outrage bubbling up. "That's not fair. Charlotte's supposed to be in everything we're in." Louis nodded solemnly. "Lottie's important." Charlotte looked back up at her father, her voice small and honest. "Did someone try to leave me out?" William's heart clenched. Kate reached for her daughter's hand. "Some people misunderstand things," Kate said carefully. "And sometimes they don't see how important all children are. But Pop and I, we will always fight for you." A moment passed. Soft. Heavy. "Because I'm a girl?" Charlotte asked quietly. And there it was, the truth he feared she would one day learn. the truth he wished he could shield her from forever. William tightened his hold on her. "No," he whispered, "because you are you. Being a girl doesn't make you less. It makes you extraordinary. And one day, your brother will be king, and he will need you beside him. You're his equal, his advisor, his strength." Charlotte nodded slowly, accepting the words even if she didn't fully understand them yet. The tension lifted just a little, enough for bedtime chaos to begin. Forts were discussed. Pajamas argued over. Lewis tried to ride the dog like a pony. George declared himself chief fort architect. Eventually, they wound down. William helped Charlotte into her pajamas, brushing her damp hair back as she yawned. "Will people try to leave me out again?" she whispered. William swallowed hard. "Maybe," he admitted, "but Papa will fight for you every single time." That answer seemed to settle her. "Then I'm not scared," she said softly. He kissed her forehead. When he finally left the room, she was breathing deeply, her hand still clutching a small stuffed unicorn Kate had bought her years ago. William stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her sleep, watching the little girl he'd fought for today without hesitation, the little girl he would fight for again and again. Kate was waiting for him in their room. She didn't speak, just open her arms. He went to her, letting the day's weight collapse in her embrace. Later, as they sat together in the dim light, Kate spoke quietly. "She'll remember this." "What? Today?" "Yes. Not every detail. Not the documents. Not the confrontation. But she'll remember that her father fought for her." William looked out the window at the dark Norfolk fields, rain dripping from the eaves. "I hope so," he whispered. "I know so," Kate said. They fell asleep like that, limbs tangled, hearts heavy but steady, knowing tomorrow would bring questions, explanations, maybe even more conflict. But at least tonight, their home was whole, and they believed the storm had passed. They were wrong, because the next morning, just as they stepped into a fragile peace, the doorbell rang. And standing on their doorstep for the first time ever at Anmer Hall was Camilla. No entourage, no guards, no makeup armor, just a trembling apology and a heart full of complicated truths. Everything shifted again. The aftermath wasn't over. It had only just begun. The morning Camilla arrived at Anmer Hall, the sky was painfully clear. Too clear for the heaviness that settled over the state. William had expected a statement, a formal apology through advisors, maybe a letter written in cautious, polished wording. But not this, not Camilla herself. Standing alone on the doorstep, fingers twisting nervously at her sleeves, eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept. Kate opened the door first. She froze when she saw who it was, then stepped aside slowly, her posture calm but guarded. "May I speak to William?" Camilla asked quietly. Her voice had none of its usual confidence, none of the polished steadiness she carried like a crown. She looked smaller, almost fragile, as if something had cracked inside her overnight. William walked down the hallway the second he heard her voice. When he reached the doorway, the look he gave her wasn't angry, just tired. Deeply, profoundly tired. "Why are you here?" he asked. Camilla swallowed hard. "To apologize. Properly. Not as Queen Consort. Not as anything but a woman who made a terrible mistake." Kate stepped back to give them space, but didn't leave. She stood close, supportive, steady, ready to intervene if needed. Camilla lifted her eyes to William, voice trembling. "I erased her by accident," she began. "But I didn't stop it either. That's the truth. And I need you to hear the whole story." William didn't speak, didn't nod, but he didn't walk away either. So Camilla continued. "For years I lived in the shadow of a woman everyone compared me to," she whispered. "Your mother. Diana was adored, worshipped, and I became the villain of her story." Kate's breath stilled. William's jaw tightened. Camilla pressed on, voice shaking. "I told myself I was used to it, that the public's hatred no longer hurt. But then my own daughter, Laura, began facing cruelty because of me. Doors closed. Opportunities disappeared. Simply because she was mine." She paused, choking on the words. And when I saw the preparations for future ceremonial events, when I saw the attention on Charlotte, the excitement for her place, something ugly twisted in me. Not toward her, never toward her, but toward the world that always treated my child as lesser. William's chest tightened, not with sympathy, but with understanding he wished he didn't have. Camilla wiped her eyes. I didn't mean to erase Charlotte. I meant to protect myself, to protect Laura, to stop the comparisons before they started again. But that instinct, it made me blind. And I hurt your daughter. I hurt you. Silence filled the room. Thick, painful, stretching like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. William finally spoke, voice low but steady. You didn't erase a name. Camilla, you erased a child who trusts her family, who believes we all stand together. Camilla nodded, tears spilling freely. I know, and I'm so sorry. Kate stepped forward then, gentle, diplomatic, but firm. Charlotte is resilient, she said softly, but she's also young. What happened could shape how she sees her worth, and we won't let that happen. Camilla nodded again, her composure unraveling. I came here because I needed you to see I regret it, and because I want to fix it. William stared at her, long, searching. Then he said something she didn't expect. You need to apologize to her. Not to me, to Charlotte. Camilla inhaled sharply. Of course, if you allow it. Kate and William exchanged a glance. A silent debate, a silent agreement. William finally nodded. Not now, not today, but soon. Relief washed over Camilla so visibly that almost aged her in reverse. Thank you, she whispered. Truly. But the moment of fragile peace didn't last long, because just as Camilla stepped back toward her car, William's phone buzzed with a message from the palace. Urgent. Windsor Castle. Mandatory appearance. Entire senior family. Kate read it over his shoulder. What now? William exhaled. We're about to find out. Windsor Castle looked colder than usual when they arrived, both in temperature and in atmosphere. Guards stood stiff at their posts. Staff moved quickly, quietly. Something was happening. Something big. William spotted his father near the private chapel, leaning on a cane even though he tried to hide it. The king's face was pale, drawn, his breath shallow. Kate reached his side first. Are you all right? Charles nodded vaguely. I've called you because there's news, and because you all deserve to hear it together. The door opened at the end of the corridor. Princess entered first, her jaw set in that no-nonsense way she had carried since birth. Edward followed with Sophie. Even Harry was there, standing slightly apart, hands in his pockets, trying to look indifferent, but failing. Then Camilla entered. The air tightened instantly. Harry's eyebrows lifted, Anne's eyes narrowed. Sophie's lips thinned. Not one person missed a tension lying thick between Camilla and the Waleses. Charles raised a hand. Enough. Today is not for old wounds. They formed a loose circle around him, the echoes of their footsteps fading into tense quiet. Charles braced himself, and for the first time, they all saw just how weak he truly was. My doctors have confirmed, he said slowly, that the treatment is not working as we hoped. Silence. A single breath. Then another. Kate stepped closer, gently taking his arm. The king continued. My time may be shorter than expected. Kate covered her mouth and blinked hard. Harry's shoulders sank as if someone had struck him. Even Camilla looked shattered. But Charles wasn't finished. That is why I've made a decision. William's heart hammered. His father straightened, summoning what strength remained. We will restore every part of the family. No more erasures. No more divisions. No more disappearing names or disappearing people. He looked at Harry. At the end of the month, I want you back. Publicly. Officially. If you're willing. Harry's eyes filled, not with rejection, not with anger, but something more fragile. Then Charles turned to William. And you will take on more responsibility sooner than planned. William inhaled sharply. Kate reached for his hand. Charles looked at the room, this fractured, wounded, complicated family, and said something none of them expected. We start again. All of us. Together, Kate stepped closer to William. Camilla bowed her head. Harry wiped at his eyes and placed a hand on her father's shoulder. For the first time in years, they stood as a family, not perfect, not healed, but united under something larger than their wounds. A soft breeze moved through the ancient hallway. A strange stillness settled. And then, almost impossibly, someone else stepped through the chapel doorway. Someone none of them had seen in decades. Someone whose presence should have been impossible. A figure with familiar eyes, familiar grace, familiar silence. The room gasped in unison, because standing there, her outline framed by the stained glass light, was Diana, or someone who looked exactly like her. And just like that, the past, the present, and the future collided in one impossible heartbeat.